Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the 10-Minute Product Podcast. And today we're going to talk about product as a service. What we were discussing with Jonas is the evolution of the CPO role in 2025. We were wondering, are there going to be more CPO roles? Are there going to be fewer CPO roles? How is it all evolving? Do companies get over the CPO role? And that brought us to the discussion about what does product actually do in the organization? How do we make the organization move forward? How do we put our own twist on things? How do we ingest requirements or wishes or goals from other teams, commercial, CEO, shareholders? How does this all work? And the discussion went into the direction of product as a service, which means for us, how do we see product helping the organization and how do we see the interaction going with the rest of the organization? Jonas, what was your first thought about product as a service?
I think it underscores what product is. We've all been in organizations where we are either the first product person in the room. We've tried to navigate and explain and evangelize what product is. Product as a service is a good headline for saying that product is in effect to bring it all together
Yeah.
with a twist. What's the twist? That's what you bring in. That's what your team brings in. That's the coherence of the direction of the product, the purpose, how you showcase the value it
Yeah, yeah.
generates, and so forth. Right? So I think it's just adding more words to a headline effect, but nonetheless, it kind of describes what product should be. Never corner yourself saying, I own product, and then noodle with your roadmaps in the
Yeah.
corner and expect everyone to sign up to it.
Yeah.
No, you need to engage and then go bring it back to your team to firm it up to something that's a bit more comprehensive from all the feedback you collected from customers and internal stakeholders.
I used to call it, if I don't talk to anyone, I'll build a product that's great for one person, me. And so I'll have a product that I love and that I'll use, but then, hey, can I pay myself for that product? So I thought early on, I figured as you get input from different sides, as a product person or as a head of product with the whole organization, my job is to ingest all of this and figure out of the spaghetti plates of ideas that you get, of inputs that you get from customers, from your leadership, from your team, from the engineering. It's your job as a product team to figure out what should we actually build out of all of this. And that's what I think is interesting as well, is that there's a lot of methods and recipes and whatever else there is in the product world that you then use, right? Like user research, tech estimates, roadmap juggling, whatever it is that you do. But ultimately, you try to find a better solution forward for the customers, for the organization, but with different inputs. And but it's not yours, so to speak. It's not you. You're going to put your imprint on it, but it's not yours. And I think that's an important distinction. And hence, I think the interesting title, right? Product as a service.
Everybody has to see themselves in what you're both the strategy but also the roadmap. So everybody is the obviously the sales department, it's the customer success, it's finance. So they need to see the value you generate. It's operations, it's the CEO, it's the investors, depending on what company you're part of. But in effect, you're kind of the guardian of the product. And being a guardian of the product is not to determine end to end what it is, but to bring it together, as we discussed.
So I've seen, yeah, I love that because I've seen several times people clashing. I won't lie, I've had these myself. When you try to be a little bit too dogmatic about your own approach or your own ideas or the way you think things should go, and you tend to clash with others. And then what happens is you get zero support from the rest of the organization. You get zero understanding. You don't get sort of engagement as well to help you. And I find that I've seen this quite a few times, and it oftentimes revolves under nobody understands what I'm doing. This is the way we should go. Okay, but if you can't explain it to anyone, then maybe it's not such a great way, right? Or also the cases of no, we need to do something for 6 months, and until then, nothing can happen. We need 6 months of time. unless you're working on some, deep formula, math, something, there's absolutely no reason why you should go for 6 months, because that will alienate everyone. That will, make everybody think that you can't deliver things faster. So you do need to find a balance as well in terms of having impact quickly without getting into the whole mode of saying, no, this is the way that it is. And
If people refer to products and what you do as your roadmap, your products, if people around you start using terms like that, you should worry, right? Because that's the first step
yep,
towards failure as a product leader.
yep,
It's not something that is happening in the product corner. It's something that needs to be co-owned and be an integrated part of
yep,
almost every corner of the company, ideally, and certainly with customers, right? So think about it. And if it's not so, either through the words you hear your stakeholders use or how they consider your the work you do and how you add value to the company,
yeah,
then you should start really understanding why. And that's a strong recommendation because otherwise you become disconnected. Christian, you and I also discussed what are the kind of behaviors that kind of doesn't deliver product as a service, right?
yeah,
It is that where you kind of build walls towards other departments, to even to the customers,
yeah.
because you think maybe put a bit on a stretch because you think you know best, and then you're not doing your job.
Exactly. So in terms of that's interesting, because you started to talk about what can you do basically. So to move on from, you have a problem in your team because one of the product managers is very, very stubborn about something, or you have a problem in the organization because you as a product lead are very stubborn about something. How do you move forward? How should we move forward from this when, let's say, you think you're stubborn, but you have a good reason for it? How can you unlock that? How can you convince the rest of the organization that maybe there's something they should consider? How could you unlock a team member of yours? So let's talk a little bit about what the steps are that somebody can take when you realize that you're a little bit in a corner of, I can't do what I want, but is that the right thing?
And it actually links to the episode we did, Christian, about how to say no constructively. I would
Yeah,
say because the short version of what should you do is show the value that the roadmap or the strategy generates for the customers and for the company. Value is revenue,
yeah,
is customer NPS, whatever way you measure success. But it's your job to show what you do, how you commit your own team's resources, engineering resources towards something, how that is a return
yeah,
at some point for the company. Uh, there's stacks of textbooks around that topic, but it starts with a scorecard that you can measure your outcomes, and those measurements should link ideally directly to one
interesting.
or two North Star
Yep.
metrics of the company you're part of.
So I love that, because another aspect I like about transparency and metrics, etc. What you mentioned earlier, it's not your roadmap or their roadmap or our roadmap. It's ours in general as a company, because ultimately, if one part of the company is unsuccessful, the rest of the company is unsuccessful. And so I love doing things such as putting a commercial person and a product person together and saying, hey, you two figure this out. You're in charge of this, and add in the mix the technical lead of the squad as well, and then you have a group of people who are in charge. The thought behind having common goals, which is usually not so easy to make happen in any organization, but the thought behind this is that precisely what I said: one piece fails, everyone fails. If you can't sell it, you fail. If you sell it but it doesn't work, you fail. If you sell it but it's a mess for signups, it's a tragedy of lawsuits because of a data policy that you messed up, whatever it is, you fail. And so you need to figure out how to get the whole package to work for the customer, which then works for the organization. And to make it work for the customer, you need the organization to be aligned. So I think that's where it starts for me, basically.
It made me think of a recent conversation I had around in an organization where product runs prioritization, or they run their own prioritization. Ultimately, it's the product manager who decides what goes into the next sprint backlog or the next increments. I think they're
Yeah.
working with, and that worried me when I heard that, right? Because The situation was that technical depth work was not addressed
Hmm.
at the company because it never made its way into the backlog.
Yeah.
Uh, and what I promoted in that conversation was the view to that everybody owns the roadmap.
Yeah.
You as a PM or as a product leader, all you're doing is just facilitating a process around prioritization, making sure that before everything lands on a roadmap, it has a particular, there's a good understanding of the case for doing it. And then you enable a prioritization process that is explicit and open to everyone to
Yeah.
see which objectives or goals gets prioritized over others, and then finally that when delivered, that there's a retrospective view on whether the case has been fulfilled,
Yeah.
and I think that's where if you get into that mindset, you first recognize the product is co-owned by everyone. Everyone can promote something to go on the roadmap. It has to go through a particular process that you own,
Yeah.
but also that there's a clear sense around the value that's generated there. And
Yeah.
as you say, Christian, it's easier said than done. Obtaining that clarity
Exactly.
comes somewhat with experience, but it certainly comes with making all the mistakes and ideally learning from them, right? Because
And
it's
I'll
not
add one
easy to
more.
achieve.
Yeah, and I love that. I love the sort of numbering, basically the
Yeah.
transparency you put around what would be the impact, what would be the effort. So this is a really useful and great step, I think, in general. Sometimes what's interesting for early stage teams or new ideas is that you cannot exactly say, hey, this will make 100,017 pounds or dollars or euros in the next, 6 months. You have no way, no real way to actually put any sort of accurate number on this or precise number, whatever. So what do teams do in this case? And what I find interesting is that the the moment you lost a team is generally when you end up with all these emotional discussions. We should launch this feature. No, we should launch that feature. No, this one is great. No, that one is great. And so okay. So you're here with several teams who are just saying our stuff is the greatest. Let's launch our stuff. And so the interesting thing I find is that if you figure out with these teams a way forward in the sense of what could be the impact of these features, of a product, of a feature, of a procedure, what could be the impact? And you need to bring teams together into a room for that, actually, and then use some brainstorming techniques, some, easy ways forward, come up with maybe some mocks maybe you have two great ideas that are competing, build a couple of mocks, dive into them to help the teams figure this out. But one of the things I really like doing with early stage teams is that kind of thing. Bring them together, trying to estimate the impact that we both agree on, even if the impact is totally made up, even if it's guesstimate at best. We'll put in the measurements to see very quickly if it's working or not. That's the
Mm.
technical part of the job. But I bring the teams together so that I am not anymore the sort of punching bag between these teams. And ultimately, it will be my fault, whatever I choose, right? Bring the teams together, have them hash it out with your facilitation so that at the end of the day we leave the room and we all agree on something, on a order of things to do, on a way forward, etc. And so I think that's the only thing I would add is for very non-measurable things early on, sorry, non-concrete things, there are ways forward as well, right?
And then another thing is that you need to understand the point of view of your stakeholders, right? There's a
Yeah.
reason why let's say a head of operations is pushing for.
Yeah.
It's a resistance to new features that may require that person to ask the teams to work weekends to manage it, or that's maybe a off case, but
Yeah.
no, you need to understand it and then show that you're taking that into account,
Yeah.
either through the upside of, let's say, launching a feature meaning it actually pays for two extra headcounts for the operations team to manage
Yeah.
it, or that you're building it in a way that doesn't add extra overheads to operations. Now I'm just using that as an example, right?
Yeah. No, super example. And
Yeah.
I think for me the my last thought on all of the stuff we talked about would be circling back with what we said early on as a service. So as a service means your ego is important because you need to drive things forward, but your ego on the other hand also has to be a little bit kept back because it's not just your ideas. And I think in this case, what I would say is I did hear this a few times where people go, "Oh, well." this team doesn't want to play ball, and this team, this la 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 loo la la lee, whatever. True, as it may be, if you want to grow as a leader, do you want to be one of the group of people who are blamed at the end for
Yeah.
non-success, or do you want to try to move forward? And so the question is, can you find a way to understand what these other teams are trying to say, whether they say it in a constructive way or whether they just throw the toys out of the pram? Can you actually dive into these, whatever they're saying, and figure out what's behind it? And I think that makes you a better leader overall after a while, because you understand what's behind, you understand the
Mm.
motivations, and maybe you figure out a way to unlock certain situations because you go and understand them. And that I find very, very powerful as well. And it's given me very good results, even though at first you need to swallow your pride back because you think, well, hold on, these guys are making a mess. I have to fix it. What is this, right? But actually, it's the wrong way to see things. So my closing thought on this would be get over yourself,
Mm.
figure out what's wrong, figure out a way forward, basically, and then propose this way forward. Do it proactively, and you become a real asset to an organization, and you're having fun in your job again as well. So it's a win-win, basically.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I'm happy that the whole notion around product CEO, you're the product CEO, that was short-lived in our industry, right? Because I did think that promoted the wrong culture around
Yeah.
being a protector rather than a guardian of a product, as we discussed. So I completely agree with the kind of
Yeah.
summary we provided there, Christian,
Nice.
which in effect is get over yourself
Yeah.
and
Get
make
over
sure
yourself.
to
Drive
be a
it.
bridge builder in
Yeah.
effect.
Drive it, but get over yourself, basically.
Exactly, and live with the scars you get from unconstructive feedback,
Yeah.
but focus on building those bridges, right? Because it's absolutely
Absolutely.
paramount to your success.
100%. Very cool. Hopefully that was useful to some of you guys who are listening. As ever, subscribe, give us a like, and tell us what you would like as next topics.